Well, since returning to the White House for a second term, U.S. President Donald Trump has dominated headlines. However, his approval ratings have declined. A sharp downturn followed his April 2nd announcement of sweeping Liberation Day tariffs on nearly all U.S. trading partners, although many of those tariffs have since been scaled back or perhaps even withdrawn. In its weekly survey, Morning Consult tracks voters' opinions nationwide on how President Donald Trump and congressional Republicans are governing the country ahead of the 2026 midterm elections. This week's results put Trump's approval rating at 46%, marking a 1-point dip from the previous week. As we track Donald Trump's approval ratings through the heart of this summer, the numbers tell a story of shifting momentum and sharp contrasts. Back in early July, surveys painted a tough picture for the U.S. president, with negatives running significantly higher than positives. Then by mid-July, that trend held steady, showing little movement or momentum, if we can say so. But then, as August began, the data turned more interesting. For the first time in weeks, support levels ticked upward and the gap between approval and disapproval nearly closed. That was a notable break from the earlier downward trend. Fast forward to mid-August, and while Trump's approval edged a little higher, disapproval still kept him underwater. Still, the margin was far narrower than what we saw in July. By the start of September, the trajectory flattened out, Trump holding on to mid-40s approval, with more Americans still critical than supportive. But the spread staying much tighter than before. As per Gallup, Trump's running an average 43% approval rating in his second term, a slight bump from the 41% he clocked during his first 4 years. For comparison here, at this point in his presidency, Biden was sitting at 49% in Gallup's August 2021 poll. President Trump's second term has been packed with flashpoints at home and even abroad. In Washington, he's tightened control over D.C. police with National Guard deployments. Overseas, his failure to end the Russia-Ukraine war. And back in June, Trump ordered strikes on Iran's nuclear sites, while in Congress, he notched a big win with extended tax cuts and stricter border measures. But controversies loom large, from the Epstein files and leaked Yemen strike plans to mass deportations and sweeping federal job cuts, all perhaps fueling fierce clashes over the limits of presidential power. And for more on this, we're now being joined by our correspondent, Susan Tharani, live from New York. Hi, Susan. First up, of course, get us up to speed with Trump's approval rating, which is down 1 point from the last week. But of course, we've been seeing a seesaw in Trump's approval ratings since he started his second term.
Yeah, very interesting polls indeed. As we're taking a look at what Americans are concerned about, of course, the economy tops it. And also tariffs. A recent Quinnipiac poll this week showed that only 19% of Americans polled in that survey believe that the tariffs are moving in the right direction. And this is despite the fact that the White House has been touting these tariffs as beneficiary to the Americans on the one hand, and also bringing in money on the other. Of course, other issues about how the White House is dealing with crime. And also this week, the Epstein files. No surprise, they're front and center about how the administration is handling those. Now, those are some of the key issues. You also have surveys in different states, notably swing states like North Carolina, where the president isn't enjoying very good approval ratings or high approval ratings. And the reason that's important is because during the last 3 presidential elections, North Carolina voted for Donald Trump. And while he won't be on the ballot this November, what happens in swing states like North Carolina are very important on who controls the Senate.
Right, so absolutely, like you've laid down the factors which are leading to this decline in Trump's approval ratings. Perhaps talk to us about the impact of Trump's approval ratings and that of the Republican Party in the upcoming midterm elections.
Right, as I mentioned, the swing states like North Carolina are going to be very important. We'll get more numbers as we get closer to the November midterms. But I think it's also very telling that when you look at the nuances of Trump's policies, overall, the way that he's dealing with crime is getting a positive review, positive polling. But then when they are specifically asked about, for example, the National Guards being deployed to aid ICE agents, that is where his approval ratings fall really low. But then he gets a very favorable rating on dealing with crime, like deploying the National Guards to Washington, D.C., for example, just for overall crime. So all of these are going to be very important factors in the midterms. Republicans are watching very closely. The messaging that's going to come from the White House is going to be very important. And again, perception is so important. Despite the fact that inflation has held steady, jobs have been created, and the stock market is doing very well. The reason the poll on the economy, for example, is very low is because overall Americans believe that their quality of life has become worse in the last few months than better.
Right, Susan. Thanks for getting us the latest right now.